Welcome to the Pantheon.Plus Rewind.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to episode 31 of The Rewind. In case this is the first time you've ever checked out our podcast, every Sunday we recap the happenings surrounding the upcoming MMORPG by Visionary Realms, Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen. We look at official news, tweets, and anything from VR themselves, and then we dig even further into social media to see what the overall community is actually talking about in regards to MMORPGs in particular, but also how they relate to Pantheon. We scour the forums, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and multiple Discords in order to try to keep everybody up to date on what's happening. If you're joining us live for this premiere at noon Eastern Time on YouTube, welcome. But if you're not, please keep in mind that you don't need to just watch this on YouTube. You can also subscribe and download for on-the-go listening on iTunes or Spotify. So of course, I'm not alone on this weekly adventure as I'm joined by my co-host and friend Theric. So as is custom to our starts, Theric, how is it going up there in the Great White North?
Well, it's not quite so white anymore. We had some snow last week, but it's all gone. But it's going well. It's going well. I'm pretty proud of myself. You know what I did yesterday? I actually did my first Christmas shopping, which beats my previous record by about 2 months, being the day before Christmas. So I actually got it done quite early. Not done. I'm not done. I got more to do, but I got it started, which is like psychologically more important than anything, because usually I don't, and then I just stress out about it until the final moment. So I'm off to a good start.
Well, I'm happy to hear you got my gift and you were thinking about me, so thank you for that. Very excited to see what that is, but of course, no early gifting. Let's wait until Christmas.
Okay. Yeah, I'll hold off on that.
Yeah, I've got a couple things on like Amazon, and I don't know. That's it.
Yeah, that was basically what it was. It was just Amazon stuff and couple of things locally that I just ordered online, but it just feels good to get the ball rolling and not have to worry about it.
My girlfriend has her tree up already and all her Christmas decorations.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah,
like
it's crazy.
What is it, November? It's like the first week of November.
And she put her tree up for Halloween and said it was a Halloween tree and decorated with all kinds of Halloween stuff, and it was really cool. But I knew that what it was for is as soon as Halloween was over, you were going to have your Christmas tree up. Sure enough. There we go.
A Halloween tree. I've never heard of a Halloween tree before. That is like it's like a Festivus kind of thing going on there. Like she's creating a new holiday or something like that.
I think this is just a way to maybe keep the tree up year round. We're going to just evolve it into different holidays. I don't know. So we'll see what happens.
Well, good luck with all that.
Yeah. Well, hey, we've rambled enough. Let's go ahead and jump into the start of the show.
Let's go.
This week in Visionary Realms news and notes.
All right, so this is where we talk about a lot of the official content and how people are responding to it. Typically, we spend a lot of time looking at Twitter posts from Visionary Realms or the Pantheon account. Today, we have one of those to look at, but first, one of the things that was really exciting is that Visionary Realms actually listed that they were hiring a technical artist. So Visionary Realms hiring at all, that's a really good thing. So we figured we would read you some of these details and point to a couple things about the position and the time frame. And, basically, here's what the website says, and then we'll kind of talk about it. So quoting the website, it says, Visionary Realms is looking for an experienced technical artist with a passion for building worlds. The candidate has to have a strong understanding of writing shaders and has experience in Unity. This is a remote, full-time contracted position for 3 months. It's interesting. We'll get back to that. Mm-hmm. Visionary Realms is a small independent studio working remotely. We are strongly committed to our project and are looking for like-minded individuals who are able to perform reliably and independently, and who are able to communicate effectively and efficiently. So what they list here is a couple things that they're hoping you've seen if you're going to apply to this is that they shipped a minimum of 2 desktop class games built with Unity, intermediate to advanced Unity experience, comfortable with built-in Unity renderer. That's such a weird word for me, renderer.
Renderer, it is a weird word, yeah.
There's weird words like that, yeah. Experience with extending Unity's built-in post-effects stack, writing a terrain shader, simple standard PBR shaders, must play well with current post-effects stack. So it just gets really in-depth here. Update speed tree shader, base shader, billboard shader. So it gets a little technical there, a little over my head on some of that stuff. But for me, it's big news that they're hiring. And it's bigger news that it's a 3-month position. Does that stand out to you at all? Do you what do you think?
You know what? No, not really. I know why. I think I know what you're going to say in terms of why it stands out to you. They, my understanding, and from following this game for a while is knowing that the way they've sort of done positions in the past is they've done these sort of short contracts with people. I think it's sort of par for the course for them from what we've seen in terms of how they bring people on. Back when things were all starting out, I remember Brad used to talk about like lessons learned from the game development industry and how he wanted to sort of run a very lean sort of operation and run a very like a different way of doing things, running a company. So hearing it that they're doing like a short 3-month contract doesn't surprise me all that much. But what like how are you looking at it?
I'm thinking that they want to try to get something big done within 3 months.
Yeah, you could be right. Yeah, I mean that's the fan in us, I think, wanting to say that. You probably, but if that's the truth, I mean that's great. If it's a matter of getting things done, I look at these requirements, and I think, man, I wish I qualified for this job, but I have none of these requirements. So I can't apply for this.
I wish I qualified for this job, and I wish I knew anything that they were requesting of me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, all I saw was must play well with current, and I thought, oh, you must play well with other staff members, but then it wasn't about that. It was about like some technical thing. Yeah. Like, nope, still not qualified for it. So
yeah, there's really nothing on that list. Yeah. Nothing on that list that I could be qualified. But if you're a technical artist and you're looking to get some experience on a really good team, build up that resume with a 3-month little job there. Definitely send your resume and help bring this game to life. There's some pretty talented people that listen to our podcast and that we've interacted with that across all kinds of professions. So any technical artists out there, jump in. Let's get this going. So
well, like on the last dev stream when Torque was on, if you watch chat, there was quite a few people who knew exactly what he was talking about with regard to like Houdini and some of the other tools that he was using. There was people in chat who were like, talking the talk, right? So there are people in the community that know about this kind of stuff and have this skill set. So, I mean, how cool is that if you were a fan of the game and you have this skill set, you could, potentially go to work on it. So, yeah,
it's good stuff. But yeah, so we wanted to highlight that a little bit because it is good news. If they're hiring, it means they're progressing. That's really good. We've been talking a lot about how they're speeding up their development now. You're starting to see things happen more rapidly. Now we're looking at someone coming in for a 3-month time period to help that rapid growth. There's just a lot of really positive things there. And then you kind of combine that into watching what we did with Torque and how quickly he's designing some of the areas. There's a lot of positive, if you read between the lines, in this message of them hiring a technical artist. So again, maybe I'm, all, butterflies and rainbows, but I do think it's a really good thing. So
it's been a while since they publicly advertised for a position too. I don't remember when the last one was, but it was at least 18 months ago. I think on the website they put one up, but so yeah, no, it's always a good sign when they're looking for somebody.
Yep, for sure. Well, and then, so let's go into the Twitter question they had. It was a weird one. So it's funny because when this was posted, sometimes I want to just be like, Kilson, because we use this so much on our show, right? But then this isn't as bad of a question when you start reading the comments from people. And I actually have a really good story. So let's jump into this crazy one. It says, does daylight savings time affect your gaming at all? Do you like daylight savings or would you rather keep the standard all year round, and why? A weird question. Obviously it's topical. It just happened. I get it. So let's read through some of these comments and we'll chat ourselves about it a bit. So Nafel says, I don't mind it in concept, but it honestly seems like more trouble than it is worth the last few years. Then again, now that I work from home, this is the new normal for me post-COVID. I find myself caring less whether the sun is up at 7 a.m. than I once did. That's funny. Strieg says, it doesn't affect my gaming, but it does annoy me. I can never understand how something that nobody wants is so hard to get rid of.
Well, you could say that about a lot of things these days, but sometimes that's just the way of the world, right? It's like maybe there's reasons we don't know about, but for some reason this thing just does not go away.
No. Rebecca S says, it doesn't affect my gaming, just my waking hours, because my cats feel they should still be fed at their normal hours and cannot read a clock.
Yeah. What about pets? When the debate about this daylight savings time comes around, nobody considers the pets, do they? Our poor dog, he doesn't know what time it is. He's just
why am I not eating? Why am I not eating yet?
Yeah. Well, exactly. It's 6:30. Why haven't you fed me my dinner yet? And we're like, no,
now in
it's
reverse,
actually,
when they get fed early, they don't care. But when they get fed late.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
A Pity says, the only way DST affects my gaming is that I go to bed an hour later than the several hours later I should have. Or I go to bed earlier, an hour earlier than the several hours later than I should have. Sleep schmeep. I like that.
There you go. Exactly.
Exorcist says, doesn't affect my gaming, but certainly affects my mood. I love that. So simple, but so good.
Yeah, it's amazing what 1 hour does for you. You like, you know, at this stage of life, 1 hour is critical to my whole balance, you know? So yeah, it's a mood thing for sure.
Yeah. Furious Pierre's back. He says, keep it the same all year long, like how we should IRL. I'm not sure what that means, but I think he's just saying, get rid of this nonsense.
Yeah.
I think he's furious.
He is furious. We know that. I think he's living in a game somewhere. So daylight savings time never actually happens for him in the game world. He's just like, you know, I have to come out of my game world to deal with this. So
could you imagine if it happened in game and all the timers like were an hour earlier or later? That'd be ridiculous.
That would be like the best like April Fool's Day joke or some sort of like weird like MMO holiday thing where they actually do daylight savings time in the MMO.
That would be
pissed
funny.
off would people be?
IP Dre says daylight savings time is essentially double XP for an hour.
There you go.
Whenever it goes back, you get a second hour. Yeah, that's not bad. That's the most positive comment among everybody here. Chi-Town Drac says no DST in Arizona. It's kind of nice. The sun rises when it rises and it sets when it sets.
So weird how some places have it and some places don't, man.
It's crazy. It makes no sense. Zelik Lived says DST destroys my, I don't even know what that says. Some sort of rhythm.
Circadian rhythm. It's like your
circadian rhythm.
Yeah, it's like your brain's internal schedule for sleep and wake and that kind of stuff.
Wow, this guy, it gets destroyed by DST, especially in the spring, he says. It takes me weeks to fully adjust to sleeping and waking up earlier. If I had my way, we'd get rid of time zones, 12-hour clocks, and time changes. It doesn't matter where Mickey's hands are pointing when the sun rises.
Wow, it's got a lot of complaints.
He's not happy.
No.
Michelle says, it would occasionally cause our non-American raiders to be late or early to raids, but we generally remember to post an announcement ahead of time. Regardless, it's antiquated and I'd be happy for it to go away. And finally, Eloa says, I find daylight savings to be useless and messy in our international, interconnected world. I'd gladly get rid of it. So it's kind of an interesting take. So again, this is kind of a weird one. I didn't know if it was something we were going to put into the rewind actually. But it actually did affect me pretty significantly. So basically one of my officers in my WoW guild was from Puerto Rico. And they don't adjust the clocks. And he was the only one in our guild that wasn't in the States and didn't have that issue. So he was also one of our main tanks. And this would push raid time back an hour for him half the year. And it was definitely a struggle for him to stay up later, or like if we were like, hey guys, you want to do one more attempt after time? We're doing good. We might clear it. Yeah. It was really rough on him. And he'd have to plan his days and nights different to raid with us. I mean, he did, but you could tell it was a beat down on him. So when we would switch back, it was like a breath of fresh air. He was like so much more energetic all of a sudden for that one extra hour. I found it pretty telling though, that like almost nobody, I guess we had one person that was about it. Almost nobody had anything good to say about it. And it's just funny because I thought that last post by Aloha where she said, that international connection of players, it is really rough. Like nobody overseas is doing this nonsense. So it's like, goofy Americans or, what's going on over there. So I hate it. I wish it would go away. We are too connected as a world. It doesn't make sense for us to do something so weird that changes the time we interact with people. So not a fan. It's affected me. I'm not a fan then, not a fan now, but I won't lie. When I get that extra hour of sleep, it does make me really happy.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm just like, you know what? I hate spring forward. I like fall back though. Fall back is great.
Keep falling back every year.
Yeah. Like why don't we just get rid of one and keep the other one, right? Because the one's good and the other one sucks, So and the thing with me is that I don't really I never see it coming, right? I'm like, oh, this is the weekend we have to do that. I'm like, okay, so is this the good weekend or the bad weekend?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Is this the good one or the bad one?
Yeah, and it seems like it's a bad one all the time, but that's just my my brain telling me it's the wrong one. But man, I don't know. This is like stuff that's a little too I don't know, out of my league to qualify whether this should be a thing or not. All I know is last week it screwed up our rewind because our rewind premieres.
Yeah, YouTube didn't care. YouTube's like, nah, we're not doing it.
Yeah, YouTube didn't adjust for daylight savings time. So to answer the question, yes, it has screwed up my gaming life immensely because I was sitting there and I was like, oh, the premiere doesn't start for an hour. I got my coffee and then I'm like, oh, no, wait, it's another hour still. Okay, YouTube just screwed up. So
yeah, I had to make it like a 1:00 premiere, but it actually premiered at noon. It was weird.
Yeah, that's really enough weird. Of that. Let's get rid of it.
Get rid of it. It's gone.
That's right.
But that's it for VR news and notes this week.
When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into the forums and fan projects to see what the discussion's all about. Okay, so this week we're going to circle back on a community debate topic on the official forums at Pantheon.mo.com. This one was put up by VR on October 15th, but we didn't get a chance to discuss it that week because that was the week we dedicated to breaking down the producer's letter. So here's what Kilson, community manager for VR, posted on the forums. He said, when was the last time you can remember your decisions in-game having some kind of meaning? So that's a huge question, right? And it really comes down to what's the term meaning look like? What does that relate to? Like, are we talking about personal emotional impact? Is that what meaning is about? Or is it like a permanent change to the game world? Or maybe it's like an effect on your social relationships or something like that. So you can take it a few different ways. And there were lots of good replies on the forums. And I think that these replies really highlight that it is different for everybody. And they actually didn't specify MMOs here, the question, if you look at it closely. It just says your in-game decisions having some kind of meaning. So people did look at single player games as well in terms to use this question to measure them against that. So we'll look at what people had to say. First up, Disposalist. He sort of takes the view that meaning is derived from the risk and challenge of combat, as well as faction choices. So Disposalist said, I would have to go back to EQ. In EQ, you're constantly making life and death decisions, sometimes on behalf of a group or even a raid. You're often making decisions that would cost you significant time and effort too, around either faction or travel. Sure, there wasn't much storyline choice with meaning, but faction decisions could have huge ramifications for the subsequent content that you could enjoy or places you could visit. So he's looking at it from that perspective. Now, Vandrad takes a more skeptical approach with it. And a lot of people actually said something similar to what Vandrad's going to say here. Like he's saying, is it even possible? And based on lack of examples, because he hasn't really seen it. So his words were, the last time, try never. Outside of EQ1 guilds killing the sleeper, I've never come across a situation where any decision I make as an individual ever had any actual meaning or any long-term impact upon the direction of the game. Nothing is permanent. Death isn't permanent. Most factions aren't always permanently good or bad. Even being rich or poor isn't a permanent state. So basically any decisions you make which give you a bad result can just be redone. So, and like I said, some people agreed with that. One of them is VJack, and he said, although it's technically been possible for over 10 years, I've never seen a team have a desire to implement persistence on a scale in any public game. The story is always on rails. Even with expansions and building world impacting items like in EverQuest 2, it was just a poorly implemented facade. Too much fear, uncertainty, and doubt, I think, prevents large-scale persistence. As a result, thematically consistent customer decisions. So, again, sort of looking at it from the perspective
why is it that everyone on the forum seems to have like a psychology degree?
Yeah, it can be that way sometimes. VJack in particular, he's got very sort of critical at times and he doesn't screw around. Like he's very
blunt,
clear in his point. Yes, to the point.
Blunt, I don't know him well. Nothing wrong with him at all. It's a very psychological look at it. But
yeah. And sometimes it's well placed. Sometimes I feel like it's a little too. It doesn't let the imagination flow as much as I would tend to like sometimes with some of it. But that's getting to know the people on the forums too. Everybody's got a personality.
I'm going to tear this question apart when it's my turn to talk. Tear it apart.
Can't wait. Awesome.
Yeah, good.
Awesome. Okay. So Nefel, he actually agreed with a little bit with what they said, but he did take a more optimistic approach in looking to the future when it comes to Pantheon. He said, if I define meaning as, quote, if I go one way, I can't come back and go another with this character, then my answer is never, unless we're talking about race or class selection. Literally no MMORPG has ever given me a choice that I couldn't undo and do differently. I might take work, but it was possible. Or sorry, he says, it might take work, but it was possible. If I soften that to say, if I go one way and I can't come back and go another without significant additional effort, then truthfully, EQ is about the only one. And even then, it was only ever about faction grinding. So the next one was Gintaki88. They made a great point, and I think this is a good one that sort of he's recalling one instance and how the community reacted to it. He says the last time, probably the climax of one of the most recent Star Wars The Old Republic expansions, making you choose to save one of your crewmates and losing the other one for good. It was tough to choose based on what I wanted or what a Jedi would do. Funny enough, things like that were in early builds of the game too, but many testers complained after killing their own crew members, even though it came with a warning pop-up. It's so interesting to me because like this is one of those things that he's speaking about personal emotional impact as being a meaningful choice, more so than like world design or anything, which is what the other ones were talking about. But he points out like even that was met with pushback. It kind of makes you wonder, like, you know, if people actually want meaningful choices, you know, because, you know, it's sometimes we think we want it, but we don't actually want it, at least not in that context, maybe. Next up, Jobson, he said he feels meaning is like tied directly to harsh death penalty in terms of like how you interact with other players. But from a PvE standpoint, it doesn't really exist. He says, I tried getting back into EVE a year ago. Player impact can be felt there on a small scale rather easily. If you save a pilot, make a friend or 20, stop a PvPer, you make a few enemies. Tell a rich player to pair off and watch them hire a bounty hunter faction to kill you on sight. This is all because the death penalty is fairly punishing. Death is horrible, but it has meaning. Every other MMO has no real meaning beyond those that are limited to your character's single player story. In response to this, Nanfoodle is his name, sorry, pointed out that those stories can be meaningful to some. He says ESO did that all the time, where story would impact your path. But in MMOs, I have found this to be rare. I like when an RPG opens doors and closes others. I think that's a really good phrase. I'm going to use that in a bit here. And Nanfoodle goes on to say, it makes your decisions having meaning, and that really happens mostly in single player RPGs. Being an MMO, decisions that can impact end game play need to be more fluid. I would love to see doors closed in Pantheon by decisions you make.
That could happen with perception. So,
yes, exactly. You can close doors that because you chose not to fully explore an area, or maybe pay close enough attention, or go down every rabbit hole.
People are going to complain so much about that. It's going to be all the people who want meaningful choices. They're going to complain. So, well, I can't do this now, and that's stupid. I didn't know. Yep, you didn't.
Yeah,
and you reacted how you should have. You reacted as yourself in the world, and this is what happened.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny. It's like, you know, that's not everybody gets everything,
trophies, man.
Yeah, when you get everything, nothing means anything.
Yeah, and it comes from the people who complain about participation trophies, and then they complain. It's such a cycle of misery.
Cycle of misery, yes. That's the name of my next MMO, by the way, is I'm creating called Cycle of Misery, and it's currently in pre-alpha development.
Forever.
Yeah, that's right. Wow, great one. Very witty. The next response is interesting because they actually recognize all the different types of meaning. So like the personal, the social, and the gameplay. And this is from Math here. He says, I guess Star Wars The Old Republic was the last one. Not sure how meaningful, but I did decide my story arc. EverQuest 1, I had quite a few meaningful decisions when I was feign death training other groups and guilds so we could take the content. And I guess some of the faction choices in EverQuest 1, especially in Kunark and Velius, had some serious in-game meaning for the rewards obtained. So I like that comment because I think it encompasses all the different ways that MMOs typically try to make meaningful choices, to make their choices meaningful. Now the question is, like, do you want to try and do all of that, or do you want to focus it more on one particular type of meaningful choice? So always a question. Sunglare brought up, a lot of people brought up SOTOR here. They really, I never played it, but it apparently had some meaningful choices. But Sunglare actually said that they were disappointed.
I don't know. Can't do it, man. Can't be a Jedi.
I would say the Star Trek MMO, but it wasn't much better as a Star Trek fan, but it didn't really live up to much high standards. I'm sure there's people out there who love it, but I never got into it. So anyway, Sunglare said that they were really disappointed by the promise of meaningful choices in that game. But they said it never played out. Many MMOs that promise them don't deliver. Your decisions just alter the destination somewhat, but the outcomes are always the same. Baron had a really interesting point. He focused on like a singular mechanic for his example. He talked about stealing as a player choice because stealing has consequences, he says. In ESO, it lasted longer and it felt more severe, and he enjoys those things. He says, with many other games, choices are really more clouded by storylines, but it's not really meaningful. In the end, it didn't really matter, and everybody ended up in the same pond. So I kind of like that approach. Like some of the earlier posts, Unicron, he said he's got yet to see an MMO that makes choices meaningful. In a multiplayer game, other than PvP, never. He says, sure, in a raid or a dungeon, bad decisions can mean the difference between success and failure or a labored victory. But even then, a bad decision by one player can sort of be fixed up by another player. The end result's ultimately the same. The group defeats the boss, the raid, the mob boss, whatever loot's collected. And there's never really a chance that the player actions will result in permanent defeat. It's just the nature of MMO. So again, he's looking at it from like a game world altering as a choice consequence. And then lastly, Hokanu takes a really counter stance to what some of the others have said about single player games being more conducive. Hokanu noted, since starting MMOs in 1999, I get very little of what could be described as meaningful gameplay from single player games anymore. For me, the meaning comes through defeating difficult challenges with a team of real people. Most recently, I was surprised when Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord, so I guess there's a multiplayer mode in that game called Captain. He says, it's intensely team-based, 6v6 small army medieval combat. Every decision, every moment has consequences in that mode. Getting a solid team together, extremely rewarding, especially when you're 2 down and the best of 3 and you get your stuff together and you find a way to claw back. That's basically what the experience he wants in Pantheon. He says, I haven't had that in an MMO I've played since EQ. So all that said, those are the responses. When I think about this and I think about meaningful choices in video games, it's got to be the most difficult thing as a genre to incorporate into the design, right? Because just by the nature of MMOs being a shared space, they have to respect everybody's player agency, at least to some extent, right? It's nearly impossible to make one's personal choice have some wide sweeping consequences for others. So choices sort of become superficial out of necessity. But that's the problem I think we've seen in modern MMOs is they always take this single player storyline, a single player game, and they try to layer it on top of the game world, right? To give them the illusion of agency, right? But in reality, it doesn't change anything like a lot of the people said. And that's why modern MMOs, I think, are using, in my opinion, the wrong paradigm when it comes to like, what is a meaningful choice? World altering events, whether large or small, that's not the way to look at it in an MMO. In an MMO, and I'm not going to say anything and nobody doesn't know already, but your character is your world, right? And character development is the only place where you really have agency to make consequential choices. It's meaningful to spend time grinding faction in a certain area. It's a meaningful choice to camp one weapon that gives you more DPS or over the choice to camp another weapon that maybe has like a useful proc or something, right? So time, is a currency in an MMO, and how we choose to spend it, that's a meaningful choice. Like I said earlier, somebody said open in one door, closes another. I think that's especially relevant in the modern age for us in terms of like our demographic, in terms of having limited time to play an MMO. I think that's where your meaningful choices come in. So, having said all that, I haven't answered the question because it sort of took me a while to come up with it. And I had to think about this for quite a while. And it dawned on me that it's just because we haven't really played a social MMO in a long time. going back to EQ, it's the easy answer. It always is. But those were meaningful choices, right? Where there were social consequences. So what guild do I join back then? I had these are things I had to think about when I played EverQuest. Do I roll need or greed on this? That's a social choice. And should I help the person out who's shouting for directions in zone chat? Those are the meaningful choices that reflect on me as a person and my reputation, which is valuable in a social MMO, but we just haven't seen that in a long time. So definitely one of those doors opens, another one closes, and sometimes it's for good and sometimes it's for bad, in terms of your reputation. So yeah, that's my long-winded speech on this. You're excited about this. What do you think? What's the last time you had to make a meaningful choice, and like, what does that mean to you, Linus?
So you turned it around a little bit at the end, but I was going to tell you that I'm extraordinarily disappointed with you and everyone in this post. And I'm going to go into some detail here, but you are not so much on my bad list right now because you turned it around at the end. I'm going to read the question. When was the last time you can remember your game decisions in game having some kind of meaning? Why did everybody go to EverQuest? Are you kidding me? Like, maybe you guys should play some MMOs then. It's really disappointing. Like, I'm not trying to come off like a jerk right now, but literally, like, we have people talking about killing one of their crew. Everyone's talking about NPCs. What's the name? What's the MMORPG stand for, Theric?
Yeah, no, it's a massively multiplayer online role-playing game.
Yeah. How about when you decide to help somebody and they become your friend?
Yeah.
How about when you join a guild and it's either really good or really bad and you either have to quit or go join another guild? How about when you make a guild and you recruit somebody, you train them, you decide to have to kick somebody out, you have to handle an interaction problem between two people. Yeah. Are you kidding me? How is this EQ? World of Warcraft dominates all those things I just said for anyone who's ever played it, unless you're a hermit and don't try to play with other people. And this whole when games were social. I met some of my best friends in the world playing WoW for 14 years. Every single time I logged into the game and I talked in guild chat, it was social. So this whole EverQuest was the only social MMO is a bunch of garbage. It's a bunch of garbage from people who haven't moved on from 1999 and just cast stones at everything that they see because, EverQuest this, EverQuest that. No, I logged into the game. I had a friends list. I had a guild. I said good morning. I asked people how their day was because it's a massive multiplayer online game. I met Haya in Blade and Soul. In Blade and Soul, if I didn't join that guild, I wouldn't have one of my best friends in the world. If I didn't join that guild and talk to him and become a co-leader with him and raid with him, we would have never went to play WoW. If we didn't go play WoW together, we would have never made our WoW guild. There would have been no Pyre. We would have never met him. And if there was no Pyre and Haya, there'd be no WoW, like when we tried to do our WoW community project. And if there was no WoW community project, there'd be no Pantheon.Plus. I mean, all of those things are super meaningful. Any memory that you have playing a game is meaningful. Like, why does it have to be, my faction, I can change it back? Okay, then that's a meaningful decision. I did this and now I have to do this. That's a meaningful decision. It's mind-blowing to me. It's mind-blowing.
To a certain extent, though.
How is it not?
If it's ultimately easy, like let's say I want to choose.
Difficulty has nothing to do with meaning. Linking difficulty to meaning it's completely null and void argument.
Yeah, but if I can toggle it like a switch, then it's meaningless.
Do you like playing Hades?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Do you have fun conversations with me about it and others? It's an extraordinary game, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's literally death is a part. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
You just play it because it's fun. Remember when we played games because it's fun? Remember when we played online games because we wanted to interact with people? That's all meaningful. Like listen, you're welcome to have your pushback here because I know I'm taking a very hard stance here, but I'm reading through these, this person says here, in EQ, you are constantly making life and death situations. How? In what way in EQ were you constantly making life and death situations?
Well, I mean, I think that's definitely like a hyperbole statement. I mean, you weren't constantly making life and death decisions.
I played EQ to the mid 50s into the 60s. I played with 3 people. I barely ever had a full group. Never joined a guild. And it's supposed to be this crazy social,
it was, I don't think I would argue strongly that it was definitely a social game. I mean, what I wouldn't argue is that WoW wasn't, right? Like, I didn't play WoW. I can only speak for the games that I've played, right? And
no, of course. And this isn't about WoW versus EQ. It's just this it's like Vandrad never had a meaningful, then why is he here? I love Vandrad. I love Vandrad. You're telling me, Vandrad, you've never made a friend in an MMO because that's a meaningful decision. You were walking along somewhere and you decided to help someone and you don't have a friend from that. Or you joined a guild with people you don't have friends with.
I think, but that's one of those things, like if you look at those first 3 responses from Vandrad and VJack, they're looking at it very much from a world affected standpoint, right?
But it's a bad stance. It's a bad position to take. I get it.
I would say that
the question is,
there's definitely ways to look at it. Like there's definitely more than one way to look at it in terms of
the question is, when was the last time you can remember your decisions in game having some kind of meaning? Massive multiplayer game. 99% of what we do is run across other players and have interactions. And not one of these people talked about that.
But not in modern MMOs though, like not in ESO, not in Guild Wars though.
Okay, so how did people logged in and they were in a guild?
Well, they log in.
People went into a dungeon and just because they got randomly placed with people they have to talk to, like whether they talk to them or not, there's human interaction. Yeah,
but you can't tell me that it's the same though as it was back.
Same as what?
Like the same level of communication, same level of interaction.
If I go play ESO right now, I will have more of a social experience than I had playing EQ for 5 years. I played with my real life friends.
What?
I played EQ with my real life friends. Well,
we got to play some ESO because that's not the experience that I have. So, but I'm happy to try it.
But maybe this is me. I'm a social butterfly, right? I've run a guild in every MMO I've been in. Do you think if you put me in ESO that I wouldn't have the same attitude?
I don't know. I know. I think you would. Of course you would. But I just think that
we had a huge group of people in like the former Pantheon guild I was in before we did the Plus guild. They had a huge guild. They did streaming together and they did events together and they had a blast playing ESO. And ESO is the 3rd most successful MMO right now. You're telling me that multi-million people playing ESO, that there's no social experience in it?
No, it's
like, how's that possible?
Yeah, it's not to the same level though, and it's not facilitated. It's not supported in the same way that older games do. There is a lack of support.
Take off the glasses. Take off the rose-colored glasses, man. Like EQ was the only thing out. Yeah. There was nothing else.
That's true. I mean, I've made that point before. Definitely, EQ definitely got an advantage of being the only game in town. I can agree with that.
It's not even hard. The game is not hard. It was hard because we didn't know what to do. If you go play it now, it's not hard.
It was difficult at the time. I mean, at the time,
so
it was difficult.
So were Sierra point and click games. So was Space Quest.
Yeah, I love that.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It just drives me crazy. There's all these people that say community matters and that they want this social experience and they're ignoring it when they don't want to see it.
I don't know, man.
Blade and Soul. It is a Asian market cash shop game. And if I didn't make the decisions I made in that game, I wouldn't know how. If I didn't make the decisions I made in that game, I've told this story before. We actually had a political investment in the game where our server was closing and we got all the major guilds together, switched factions so we'd all be on the same faction and work together to form a mega guild to move our whole server of the most well-known players together to another server.
There's definitely what you make of it. Yeah, definitely what you make of it. There is something to that 100%. I'm not, everything can be.
So you're saying if you don't put effort into the main core thing of an MMORPG, which is massive multiplayer, right? So if you decide as a player, you're going to play them as a single player experience, unless the game forces you to play it as a massive multiplayer experience, then it's the game's fault. It's not you as a player.
No, I mean, no, it's not. I'm not saying it forces you. I'm saying it doesn't support it to the same extent, right? There's a reason that people are drawn to Pantheon because it's extolling these old, it's not extorting anything. It's extolling these old school social values and social way of approaching an MMO that like there's a deficit in the modern MMOs.
So forced group content
that aren't offered. What's that?
You're saying forced group content.
To some extent, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was in a group 99% of the time I played WoW, whether I needed one or not, just to be with people and to chat and have fun.
I think WoW isn't. Like I said, I didn't play WoW, but I know that WoW is closer to anything that I don't
I'm not trying
WoW
to just
in the
defend
same
WoW.
category as like
Secret World.
more. I didn't play Secret World. I don't know, but
it's a crap game. I loved it.
Yeah.
And I had a group of people I played with, and we had our little guild thing, whatever it was called. And we got to max level and we did the hard mode raids, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. It goes back to this whole participation trophy thing that fired me up to begin with. Everybody's like, this genre sucks now. It hasn't been good since EQ. So essentially, then you're not that guy. But if you're one of those people, you don't like MMOs. You played one that you liked because it was new, and then you hate the genre. I'm sorry. Like, you can't play one game in a massive genre and say everything else sucks. You don't like the genre then. Then you don't like it.
No, I agree. I like Guild Wars 2 for what it is.
Well, did you have fun in Guild Wars 2? Did you make friends?
Absolutely. No.
What is going on? Why are you not social?
I was very social. I tried. There's no need for it. There's no reason to, other than the socialization aspect of it. But if you're the only one that's doing it for that reason, and the game doesn't support that, you're out on an island by yourself. There's no reason. Like, you have to understand that people, sometimes people need to be brought out of their shell socially.
How long did you play Guild Wars 2?
Couple of years.
You didn't meet. You have nobody on your friends list. You have nobody you talk to that you played Guild Wars 2 with.
Nobody that there was any reason to form a lasting in-game relationship with, because the game didn't support that kind of thing. That wasn't how you progressed in Guild Wars 2. It wasn't where
me and Haya played it together the whole time we played it.
Yeah, well,
the Standing in Fire team said it was their favorite MMO ever.
I like Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like,
I know, but I liked it not for different reasons. I didn't like it. I liked it because it was fun as a single player game, right?
Reading through these comments makes me crazy. And to anybody listening, I'm not insulting you. I'm not trying to say you're wrong. It just makes me crazy. Like, this guy here says never played an MMO, even Star Wars, that promised the choices. Everybody's looking at it as a single player game, and then they're complaining about the single player aspects.
Yeah. Well,
doesn't make any sense.
That's a good point. I mean, if you take it as a single player game, we have a great bevy of MMOs out there for you right now to enjoy. It's just that
I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. I would challenge every one of these people that they don't have a friend that they met in an MMORPG. And anyone who's only played EQ, you're not an MMORPG fan. I'm sorry. I love you. You can play Pantheon. We can be friends. But you're not an MMORPG fan if you only played EQ. I'm sorry. You're not. You're not. If you watch one comedy movie in your entire life, do you like comedy?
I would say no. You're not a fan of comedy movies.
If you've watched one horror movie ever and you liked it, but you never watched another one, are you a horror fan?
No, it's a weird analogy, but I get what you're saying. I get it. You have to see the whole thing. You have to see the big picture, and I mean, it's an interesting concept. It's an interesting debate, and I know what you're saying, and I know why you're frustrated, and I get it.
It's not that I'm frustrated. I just don't understand. What people want from games is sometimes unachievable. They want to be forced to do something, but then they don't want to be forced to do it. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like, don't play MMORPGs. Go play Divinity. You'll make tons of meaningful decisions. Go play Baldur's Gate.
There's been like a board meeting where a bunch of developers are making a game and they're sitting around going, what do our players want? And they're like, I don't think they know what they want.
They don't. And then that's the worst part whenever they're trying to tell people how to design a game and they have no clue. Like, Vandrad's one of the most vocal people in the world. I love him to death. And he's saying that there's never, ever been a meaningful situation in any game he's ever played, essentially.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like, how about every time that I spent hours sim crafting to try to come up with new builds, and I played new builds that weren't, supported, and I figured something out? That's meaningful.
Yeah. What's meaningful to one person is not meaningful to another person. I mean, that's the end of the day. That's disregard
relationships. Like, relationships. Anyone can fight me to death on this topic. Relationships are meaningful. Whether it's someone you pissed off and that's your enemy forever, or it's a friend. Every relationship and every human interaction is meaningful.
Yeah.
Like, if you choose to swear at some guy that is in your random pickup group and you make them all miserable and they leave and now they're miserable and they quit the game, that was a meaningful decision you made. Yeah.
That's what I was saying right at the end there. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was saying. And I'm proponent of reputation sticking with you and being part of that meaningful choices thing. So, and I've said that from day one, that reputation needs to be sticky. Yeah. It needs to be attached. So, that's a good one, man. I'm glad I found such a
people are going to bury me because I'm so passionate about this, but it's like, I'm done. Let's move on.
Okay. Moving on. For this week for fan projects, it's funny. Inspiration is like such a funny thing. You either have it in spades or you're completely out of it. Right. And you and I both, as sort of, creative people, can attest to that, I'm sure. But Crowsinger, who I've mentioned 3 weeks in a row now, has hit the inspiration lottery because they have a third fan fiction piece over on the forums for the third week in a row. And it's called The Song of Seret. It's a standalone tale, and you can find it over on the fan fiction forums at Pantheon.Mo, like I said. So as a struggling fan fiction author myself, looking for inspiration, I'll just have whatever Crowsinger's having, and maybe I can finish my my long overdue fan fiction piece that I've been working on. But go over there and check it out.
Make sure your character doesn't have any meaningful interactions when you write your fan fiction.
I think I've found some inspiration in our conversation tonight. I'm gonna go write or something. But yeah. So anyway,
I cannot believe that Vandrad. I love you, but never had meaningful. Go.
You have to ping him on Discord after this.
I'm gonna ping him on Discord.
Heart to heart or something. Yeah. So that's it for this week's community discussions.
Let's talk content creator updates and new additions to Pantheon.Plus.
All right, on Pantheon.Plus, a bunch of stuff happened, but nothing was meaningful. So let's just skip it. I'm just kidding. So Nathan Napalm did his class videos. I'm gonna go through this rather quickly. There's not a whole lot. It's a pretty slow week. He did a monk, ranger, and paladin class review. So if you love that napalm flavor, check that out. Drac put out 2 more profiles this week, highlighting Plate of Voices of Terminus' new show, Fully Geared, and also Sinbayan. Is that how you say it? Sinbayan?
Yeah, Sinbayan. I just watched it before we started recording. Yes, Sinbayan.
Sinbayan. Longtime EQ fan, looking for a new home. So check those out if you like to learn a little more about the community or hear people's stories. I think they're really fun. They're like 3 to 5 minutes max, and you just kind of learn about the people who are excited about the game around you. I think they're really, really cool. Like we don't get a ton of views on them, but I think they're some of the favorite things that we do because it really ties into that community side. And if you watch it and you like it, go reach out to Drac. It takes a couple minutes in Discord to record your answers and he'll put the video together. And then you have your little stamp there. When you go into the game, you have a small reputation or small stories about you. I love it.
Fun stuff.
I gotta be Drac is such a community guy. It's just awesome. He's even more so a community guy than me. Not because I'm not trying to be, but he's good at it. He's just constantly digging in there and talking with people even more than I'm able to. And it's awesome. So
definitely.
So what's being worked on the website? We told you guys last week, we're going to be looking at the race and class pages. We've updated the spell database, but we have to put it into the page. Really, we're just kind of looking at small fixes. And to be honest with you, we've been pushing so hard for this article update for so long. Just kind of taking a break and make sure it's working. That's really where we're at. After a couple weeks here, we'll probably start really pushing out the new pages and designing them. But little break, check in and see if we have any issues, if people have issues viewing them, linking them, just doing little bug fixes for a little bit here. So that's it. So other news from us, Theric, this is all your fault. I can't stop playing 80s. I can't. I don't sleep.
You got a problem.
I don't get things done. This game's amazing. If you're a Pantheon fan and you're like, oh, every game sucks, go buy this game. We don't make anything off of it. Supergiant Games could care less that we exist. Go get 80s. If you don't like roguelikes, I don't care. If you haven't played this style of game and you don't like it, I don't care. This game is amazing. I don't like any roguelikes. The game's good. When a good game comes out, it doesn't matter what genre it's in if it's that good. This game's that good. Great story, amazing controls, fluid combat, just a few things that make it great. I am so obsessed. I woke up at 6 a.m, got my daughter up, gave her breakfast, and squeezed a run in before I had to take her to school.
Yeah, you texted me this morning and I was like, but Daddy, I'm hungry. Like, hold on, honey. Hold on. I'm just about to beat Hades. Hold on. Just eat your Cheerios.
It's so good. I think I have 56 hours in right now. Sorry, guys. My voice is still a mess. So you guys probably hear that a little bit through this. I beat the game with all the weapons. I also unlocked all but one of the hidden weapon aspects. Now I'm working towards all the hidden companion skills. I even killed Sharon, Whooped his ass, by the way. Whooped him. Theric, this is honestly the best game I've played in like years and years and years. Like it's unbelievably good. So I blame you for my lack of productivity and sleep. The other night I played it till 2 a.m. and I had to get up at 6, and that was a wreck. I was a wreck.
I have a feeling I'm going to be writing a letter to your therapist at some point, or checking you into a rehab facility and trying to explain what exactly is going on with you, and saying, well, you can't let him play this game. It's ruined him. He's a shell of the man he used to be. And I mean, in all seriousness, it's an amazing game, dude. It's like, it's an indie developer. I just love this studio so much and everything they do. And I've been like the biggest fanboy of them for the longest time. I always tweet about it and stuff. And it's like, when it pays off like this, when other people get this much joy out of it, man, it is just crazy. So good.
Guys, like, I'm not kidding you. It's only what, $30, $40 maybe. It's so good. It's so good. Like, I can't even.
We're going to start a new podcast. It's called the Hades Rewind.
No, I can't, because I have to be playing it. So I do this, then I go back to playing it. So it's so good.
There you go.
56 hours, 50 something runs. I can't stop. This is one of the, like, when a game is so good that you want to unlock everything and you actually do it, that is like 1 out of 10,000 games for me. That's how good this game is. So, yeah. Anyway, go get Hades. That's it for us from Pantheon.Plus.
Sit back and relax. It's time for The Lore You Know. Okay, this week we get familiar with one of the primary figures in the story of the 9 races, that is being King Causus of the Dwarves of Terminus. And this was actually requested by the community. So, every race has their pantheon of deities, and Causus was, at one time, one of them for the Dwarves. On their homeworld, he was known as Causus of Aldasa, but he also known as the Dwarven Father. And like I said, he was a deity. In fact, he created the Dwarves through like the perfect melding of stone from Coldark Peak and a shard of the ice of Ryfel. Such was the bond between Causus and the Dwarves that it was like parent and child. And upon Terminus, it was this bond that would later lead Causus to sacrifice his immortality for the good of the people to rule amongst the Dwarves as a high mortal. So he now rules as King Causus in the fortress of Cadassa, and he's led the Dwarves for over 900 years. Causus's role in the Deicide War, as well as in deciphering the Dragon Accord, are also very, very important in the history of Terminus, but those are tales for another time. So that's the lore you know. And with that, it's time to check the mailbox.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it gets here, I just yell, mail! We're getting sued.
Well, that song can only mean one thing, and that means it's time to answer some questions. So I'll start with the first one. I'll answer first, and we'll just rotate from there. So LaFell says, from all the MMOs you've played and characters you've had, the retiring of which one had the greatest emotional impact and why? Great question.
Yeah, that's great.
I would say that it's really tough. Leaving Blade and Soul was like a necessity. I still loved the game, but I was spending so much on the cash shop and it was getting obsessively bad because I'm a gambler. Everyone knows that. Like, I like to gamble. I got into it. And I'm not going to sit here and say I regret it. I just realized it was getting into a dangerous territory and I had to remove myself. So I really enjoyed my character. I enjoyed like the flair that I was able to get from my character, how cool I looked, how strong I was. I was well known. There was a lot to it it was pretty upset to step away from that game, honestly. And then other than that, it's funny because it's not so much the character, but like when I left WoW as Minus and I handed the guild over to somebody and said goodbye to everybody, that was emotional. That was intense. And I never went back, like never. So I guess that's kind of bad because it's not so much the character. Like, I guess Blade and Soul was, but never playing my Warlock, which was the last character I played in WoW. And keep in mind, I played a bunch of characters in WoW. So, but that was the last character I ever played, minus the Warlock. So
Yeah, it's funny, when you put in so much time into these games, and it's like these characters become an extension of you. For me, I'm going to use a phrase that by Neil Young here to talk about sort of how my characters went away. But Neil Young said in one of his songs, "It's better to burn out than to fade away." And that sort of gives you my answer here, because EQ, like we've talked about a lot, is my first love. And EQ Theric definitely had the most blood, sweat, and tears put into it over the years. So it'd be easy to go that way. But with EQ, I burned out, and so I had a peaceful parting with my character. It was difficult to decide, but not in a bad way. But then there was Vanguard. And the thing with Vanguard is that it wasn't my choice. Like I had my Thestran Ranger from the village of Tersh. His name was Lorden. He was in his prime, right? I worked hard on Lorden as a character, and I was ready to ascend, like we were doing new things. We were ready to discover new content, the whole thing. I had built a boat, I had a home on an island, and I had a good guild. But then the world faded around me, right? Like, so I didn't say goodbye to Lorden, and I had to watch the world sort of ultimately fade away from under his feet. And that was tough, it was, so all my hard work was sort of felt like it was for nothing, because it wasn't my choice. So while Theric burned out, Lorden just faded away. And, that still kind of bums me out after all these years. But it's a great question, and I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't really thought about my Vanguard experience from that lens, I guess. So I really enjoyed actually going back down memory lane a little bit with that.
It's a good quote. I'm singing the song in my head. I was like, gosh, should I try to sing it like Neil right here?
Yeah, I won't try to sing it, but it is a good song. Yeah, for sure.
All right. So the next question here is from John Wayne. It says, it's a 3-part question here. So I think it kind of ties it all together. John Wayne says, in terms of gameplay appearance, what is the most graphically important to you and why? Is it zones and cities in the world itself? Is it custom animations for melee abilities and spells? Is it the look of gear and the overall character model itself? So I'll let you start with that. That's a great question.
It is a good question too. And it was a tough one to sort of figure out. This might surprise you what I'm going to say, Minus, but I'm going to go with the third option, character models. And I don't even care about the gear as being part of it. I just want to focus on the models. Because you're always looking at your character right from the start. When you load up the game and you've got that character select screen in front of you, right? To the downtime when you're sitting in your group, you're just sitting around. I'm always rotating the camera around, maybe, looking at stuff. Most of the time, checking myself out. I'm like, what do I look like right now? Like, what does my model look like? And if the character models are weird, there's no gear in the world that can fix, a bad looking face, or some sort of odd body type shape. It doesn't matter what you do. I'll give you an example. When they showed VR showed their models for the Darkmer and the Archai, I loved how they looked, especially the Archai. I really look back on that and I'm like, I like them so much. I would consider either being a main. If they could be rangers, there would be a strong consideration not to be an elf and to be an Archai. And on that note, in the last dev stream, Torque showed those models. They showed that elf model. Gotta say, not feeling it, not
Too
feeling
short.
the elf model.
Too short?
Too short. Yep, definitely too short. Something's off about it. So I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just me. But so I'm gonna say character models. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, obvious, right? Character models and gear, without a doubt. I'm most related to real life. Like you just said a bunch of things. Like think about it. Like you wake up every morning, you look in the mirror. It's either a good day or a bad day. As you get older, there's a lot more bad days.
Yeah.
You brush your teeth. You're looking at yourself in the mirror. You get a good outfit on. You're like, all right. You feel confident. You go out in the world. If you're driving to work or you're driving to somewhere you drive to all the time, you don't look at anything. How many times have you been driving your car and you're like, oh, I'm here. Like, how did I get here? I don't even remember driving, right? Like the world around you is beautiful when it's discovered, but when you're in it and live in it long enough, it's just there. And I feel like people might get really upset with me for saying that because it's still important. But discovery is important. Living in it is just, as long as it feels like the world, it's good. But yeah, like you said, you look at your gear, you look at how you present yourself as a character. I mean, that's all super important to me. I agree. And I'm super happy with my halfling. So
even the man bun, you're still good with that?
Well, no, we'll probably be changing that out. But other than that,
fair enough.
Pretty good. Chobin says, to fill the space between key locations, you perform more quiet environmental storytelling with no quests attached, one where you have to draw your own conclusions with maybe some guided storytelling here and there, Or would you prefer most or all the interesting bits be told via perception? And would you have any kind of reward for these finds? Or should the lore and discovery be enough for the player? Whew, there's a lot here.
Yeah, it's a big question. Yeah, I kind of took a piece of it. I didn't answer the whole thing. So,
well, if you have an answer, you go first.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, the art of pulling off storytelling through like environmental design is definitely an art form in and of itself. I've played games on both ends of the spectrum when it's like pure environmental with no text or dialogue whatsoever. And I've played games that are just basically in your face, very blatant and blunt with their storytelling aspects. So I think environmental storytelling is my preference. There does need to be some, there needs to be some text or dialogue, information conveyed to you beyond just looking at the world. So but I definitely prefer more of a balance, more of a weight on the environmental storytelling aspect of it. And we've talked about it before. There should definitely be rewards through the perception system, through discovery and what your role as a keeper might be. So yeah, it was a big question. I just chose to focus on that one part.
Says the guy who has a segment called The Lore You Know, and he wants it to be environmental. I just want to make sure he was clear on that.
Yes, that's true.
So I think the game telling you a story is very important. Very, 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 very important. And I'll go back to an example I've used before, which is Rift. I enjoyed Rift. The launch of Rift was phenomenal. It did so many things that no other game did. The soul system was incredible. The class system was incredible. But what it boiled down to is, like, when I got to the first raid, I was fighting these people in this hedge maze raid, and I didn't know why. There was like, okay, I'm killing these guys. Oh, here's the big bad guy. Okay, who is he? If I'm fighting a big baddie and I'm fighting hard to get there, I really hope the game's told me enough about them so that I know who they are and I know why it's exciting. And I think that that's super important for me, especially as a major combat raiding dungeon guy. I want to know something. Like, it was even exciting in EQ to kind of get some of the lore in Unrest when the dwarf was down there. Like, you hear him talking a little bit and you can actually get some of the lore of it. I thought that was awesome. Like, that kind of stuff should exist. I think that you're discovering the world and you should be able to somehow learn about it. I think it's very important.
That's a great bring up about Unrest. I hadn't really considered that, but that's exactly what this is talking about. So yeah, I like that a lot.
Yep. And perception, yes, you should. If you do perception things, I think you should get tangible rewards. And for everyone who says, well, what if I don't want to be a keeper? Then you don't get them. Sorry. But what if I don't make a decision right? Then you still don't get them. But thanks for trying.
You have other choices you can make.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay. Last one, JJ. For better or for worse, a lot of MMOs usually incorporate the usage of traveling through time in order to present the game's lore in an interactive way. Do you think Pantheon should eventually follow suit? Go back and explore the planets? Oh, I'm going to answer first. Yes. One of the coolest things in WoW is when they did the Caverns of Time, and you actually went with Arthas when he purged Stratholme. And he was just Arthas. He wasn't the death, the Lich King yet. And you go back in time, and the reason is because there's these dragons that travel through time, and they're trying to manipulate time and kill Arthas to save the world. But the fact of the matter is, as the heroes, like, you can't do it that way. Like, you can't destroy all existence to stop this one bad thing from happening. So you actually go back in time in the Calling of Stratholme, and what's funny is, like, if you were a Draenei, they didn't exist yet. So it actually made your character model illusion to like a gnome. Like, so that there was like an actual fabric so that Arthas wouldn't know something was wrong. You were just supposed to be troops accompanying him. But all of a sudden, he would go off and do his thing, and this little side portal would open where the dragons would come out, who were going to come try to kill him. You'd run off to the side, kill these dragons, and go back to the mission. So you were there to ensure that time properly went on. It was awesome. Like, there were like 3 or 4 of those, and they were so fun. There was one where you had to like protect Thrall, like from prison and break him out of prison and stuff. Like, really, really cool things that taught you about this world that exists, because the world shouldn't start when we log in. The world should have a history, and being able to experience that history, whether it's through time travel or whatever it is, it's a game. This is a video game. Like, we should be able to do it. So yeah, I love that. And honestly, when they first did those Caverns of Time dungeons, I thought that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. So
Yeah, man, I hope they do something like this, eventually with Pantheon. That would be awesome to be able to go
going
back
to other planets. Oh man.
Wow, even just going back in time to witness the collisions, right? To witness, when the ogres and the dwarves and the elves arrived, and to sort of see it happen. And then, yeah, going to different planets has a bit of a bad history attached to it because of I think the moons thing with EverQuest at some point got a little silly. I don't know. I wasn't around for that phase of EverQuest, but yeah, no, I'd love to do something like that where you go back in time and explore. This is like a lore nerd's dream, right? To go back and witness history.
Just what about seeing Terminus before the collisions? What the planet look like?
Yeah, exactly. And that
going to see other areas. Yeah. To see other areas, what they used to look like and be walking around oh my God, I know what this area is, Yeah, I think that's really exciting.
Oh, it's super exciting. I would be 100% down for that. So great question, awesome. JJ.
Well, thank you everybody for listening to another episode of The Rewind. And thank you for listening to me rant and rave about meaningful decisions in a massive multiplayer MMORPG. Oh my God.
Opinions.
Some opinions are bad. But at the end of the day, everyone's allowed to have them and we welcome them here and we do like it. And I do appreciate your guys' feedback, and it made for a fun episode that we thought otherwise was I thought this was actually gonna be one of our shorter episodes. And then I ranted and raved like a lunatic. So there's always that. There's always that. Thank you everybody for listening, whether you're listening to us live on YouTube Premiere or downloading us on Spotify or iTunes. Really appreciate it. 31 episodes. We always say it, but it's 100% true. It doesn't happen without you and the community supporting us. So thank you for that. And I do apologize. My voice has been a living hell for the last 3 weeks. It is sort of getting better. I think it was like a respiratory infection. So I apologize for some of the coughing or some of the weird voice stuff. It will be normal soon, hopefully, or I'm going to lose my freaking mind. So Theric, thank you for another great episode, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, awesome, man. Great job. And we'll see you guys next week.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon.Plus Rewind. Be sure to follow Minus and all Pantheon.Plus related content on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube under the name Pantheon.Plus. Also, be sure to follow Theric at PantheonTheric on Twitter. Keep up to date on all Pantheon Rise of the Fallen information on www.Pantheon.Plus, the definitive source for all media of Pantheon. Until next time.